what if the greatest burden of your life was never a burden at all, but a map? What if your sensitivity, the very thing that has caused you so much pain, is not a personal flaw, but a secret commission for a mission you were born to undertake? For decades, empaths have been told they are too sensitive, too emotional, broken vessels in a world that demands a hardened shell. Many have come to believe it. They have tried to dull their senses, to build walls, to shrink themselves, to fit into spaces that were never meant to contain them. But the legendary psychoanalyst Carl Jung discovered something else entirely. He uncovered a secret hidden in the patterns of his clinical work, a truth so profound it redefines the empath's place in human history. Jung saw empaths not as victims, but as pioneers, the emotional cartographers of humanity, sent to map the vast, uncharted wilderness of the human soul. But this journey, like any great exploration, is perilous. The pioneer is often misunderstood, resented, and even attacked by the very settlers who will later inhabit the lands they discover. Their light, which illuminates the path forward, also disturbs the creatures that have grown comfortable in the shadows. In this video, we will unveil Carl Jung's secret blueprint. We will not only explore why you are a pioneer, but provide the essential guide on how to survive the journey. Stay with me, because understanding this will change not only how you see yourself, but how you navigate the world forever. The first step in any great journey is to understand the nature of the territory. For the emotional pioneer, that territory is often hostile, not because of what is ahead, but because of who you are. This brings us to the core of your experience. The pioneer's paradox. The paradox is this: the very qualities that make you an effective pioneer, your authenticity, your emotional depth, your intuitive perception, are the same qualities that trigger unconscious hostility in others. To understand why, we must venture into one of Carl Jung's most crucial concepts: the shadow. Jung described the shadow as the unknown, dark side of the personality. It is a vast container within each of us that holds everything we have repressed, disowned, and refused to acknowledge about ourselves. It holds the grief we never processed, the anger we were taught was unacceptable, the vulnerability we learned to hide in order to survive. Most people spend their entire lives running from their shadow, constructing elaborate personas and psychological defenses to keep it locked away. They achieve a kind of functional numbness, a state of being where they are not truly alive, but they are also not feeling the full spectrum of their buried pain. And then you arrive. As an empath, as a pioneer, you are a living embodiment of emotional authenticity. You feel things deeply because you have not severed the connection to your own soul. When you enter a room, your presence acts like a brilliant light switched on in a dusty, sealed-off attic. The light itself is pure, but it instantly illuminates all the swirling dust, the cobwebs, the forgotten and neglected things. You don't create the dust. You simply reveal what was already there. This is the essence of what Jung called shadow projection. When people resent you for being too much, or criticize you for being too sensitive, they are not truly seeing you. They are seeing a reflection of their own abandoned sensitivity. Your emotional freedom reminds them of their own self-imposed prison. Your courage to be vulnerable triggers the phantom limb pain of the vulnerability they amputated from themselves decades ago. Their resentment is a coded, unconscious confession of their own inner tragedy. Think of it this way. Someone who has betrayed their own emotional truth for the sake of social acceptance or a quiet life develops an unconscious allergy to genuine emotion. Your authentic expression becomes the pollen that triggers a violent, inexplicable reaction. They attack in you what they have killed within themselves. This is not a conscious, malicious act. It is a psychological reflex, a desperate attempt to destroy the mirror that shows them what they have lost. Understanding this is your first act of liberation. The hostility you face is not personal. It is not a verdict on your worth. It is a diagnostic tool. It is information. The intensity of their reaction is a measure of the depth of their own unhealed wounds. The criticism they level at you is a confession of their own self-betrayal. When you truly grasp this, the arrows of their resentment no longer pierce your heart. You learn to observe them, to understand them as signals from a foreign land, and to continue charting your own course. The paradox is that their resistance is confirmation. It is a landmark on your map, telling you that you have entered the uncharted territory where true discovery happens. It confirms you are on the right path. Now, knowing the lay of the land is one thing. Having the tools to traverse it is another. A pioneer without a survival kit will not last long in the wilderness. Carl Jung's work doesn't just provide the diagnosis, it provides the equipment. This is Jung's survival blueprint, a set of indispensable tools for the emotional pioneer. The first and most vital tool is the energetic compass. This is the ability to distinguish between empathy and absorption. This distinction is the single most important skill for an empath to master. The difference between reading the map and becoming lost in the swamp it depicts. Empathy, in its purest form, is a clean perception. It is the ability to feel with someone, to understand their emotional state as if it were your own, without losing the knowledge that it is, in fact, not your own. It is clear, objective data. You can sense a friend's anxiety and recognize this is their anxiety. I understand it. I can respond to it with compassion. Absorption, on the other hand, is a state of unconscious fusion. It is when you take on the other person's emotional state as your own. Their anxiety floods your nervous system, and suddenly you are anxious, your heart racing, your thoughts spiraling. You have lost your center. You have mistaken their weather for your climate. The pioneer who absorbs the fear of the wilderness becomes paralyzed by it. Your energetic compass is your internal faculty of awareness. Before engaging with a person or a situation, you must learn to consult it. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now that is truly mine? And then, what am I sensing that belongs to them? This simple practice of sorting and labeling emotions creates a crucial buffer. It allows you to use your empathic perception as the powerful information-gathering tool it is, without being capsized by the data it collects. The second tool is the construction of a psychological fortress. For too long, empaths have been given flimsy advice about building walls. But a wall is a blunt, primitive instrument. It isolates you. It keeps out the good along with the bad. A pioneer doesn't need a prison wall. They need a fortified outpost. Think of your energetic boundary not as a solid wall, but as a fortress with a gate, a watchtower, and a gatekeeper. And you are the gatekeeper. From the watchtower, you use your energetic compass to observe who or what is approaching. You assess their intent. Is this a weary traveler seeking genuine shelter? A friend in need of true support? Or is this a raiding party intent on plundering your resources? An energy vampire, a chronic complainer, a projector of shadows. Based on this assessment, you, the gatekeeper, make a conscious choice. You can open the gate wide for a trusted ally. You can open it just a crack to pass a cup of water to a stranger. Or you can keep it firmly shut against those who mean you harm, consciously or unconsciously. This is not a passive defense. It is an act of sovereign command. Building this fortress means getting radically clear on your own values and energy reserves. It means giving yourself permission to say no without guilt, to disengage from conversations that drain you, and to choose where you invest your precious life force. It is the structure that allows you to be open to the world without being invaded by it. The third, and perhaps most empowering tool, is the art of translation. This is the mental practice of converting unconscious attacks into useful intelligence. Pioneers must learn the language of the wilderness, and in the emotional wilderness, the language is often coded in criticism and projection. To survive, you must stop taking these messages at face value and start translating them. Let's create a small translation guide. When someone says, "You are just too sensitive," you translate it to, "Your capacity to feel threatens my carefully constructed numbness." I am uncomfortable with the depth you represent because it reminds me of the depth I have abandoned in myself. When they say, "You need to toughen up and get a thicker skin," you translate it to, "I was wounded and forced to build armor." Seeing you exist without that same armor frightens me and makes me question the price I paid for my own survival. When they accuse you of being too intense or too much, you translate it to, "Your emotional aliveness is a blinding light compared to the dim wattage I am used to. I am not accustomed to this level of authenticity, and it short-circuits my persona." This is not an exercise in arrogance. It is an exercise in radical, compassionate detachment. By translating the attack, you strip it of its power to wound you. It ceases to be a judgment on your character and becomes a poignant piece of data about theirs. You are no longer the target. You are the researcher. You are the cartographer, noting the psychological landscape of the person before you. This art of translation turns every potential confrontation into an opportunity for deeper understanding of them and of the human condition itself. It is how you stay sane and centered while navigating a world that does not yet speak your language. The path of the pioneer is littered with cautionary tales and heroic sagas. The stakes are real. Not every explorer who sets out to map a new world returns. Jung himself documented these patterns, observing how some individuals integrated their gifts and changed the world, while others were consumed by the very wilderness they sought to understand. Consider the archetype of the failed pioneer, a story we have seen countless times. Think of the visionary artist, born with a sensitivity that allowed them to perceive the world in colors and textures others could not. They present their work, their soul laid bare on the canvas, only to be met with ridicule and misunderstanding. "It's too strange," the settlers say. "It's too dark. It's not like what we know." At first, the artist holds to their vision, but the relentless barrage of criticism, the constant friction against a world that demands conformity, begins to wear them down. They begin to internalize the voices of the crowd. They start to believe the devastating lie, "Maybe something is wrong with me." And so, they compromise. They soften the edges of their work. They use brighter, more acceptable colors. They begin to create not what their soul demands, but what the marketplace desires. They gain acceptance, but they lose their vision. They become a successful settler, but the pioneer within them dies. They are consumed not by a wild beast, but by the slow, grinding erosion of their own authenticity. Now, consider the archetype of the successful pioneer. Think of a figure like Eleanor Roosevelt, a woman born into a rigid aristocracy that prized emotional restraint above all else. Yet, she possessed a radical empathy. She had the capacity to feel the suffering of the disenfranchised, the poor, the marginalized, the forgotten, as her own. Early in her career, she was criticized for being too emotional, too involved, too much of a bleeding heart. The settlers of the political establishment told her to stay in her lane, to be a quiet, dignified first lady. But she refused. She used her energetic compass to connect with the nation's pain without being destroyed by it. She built a psychological fortress, maintaining her graciousness while fiercely protecting her mission. And she mastered the art of translation, understanding that criticism from her opponents was often a confession of their own fear of change. She used her empathy not as a source of private pain, but as a public instrument for social justice. She journeyed into the coal mines and the slums, the forgotten frontiers of her own country, and she brought back reports that changed policy and reshaped the nation's conscience. She did not just survive the journey. She used it to create new maps of compassion for an entire society to follow. These stories illustrate the critical choice that stands before every emotional pioneer. Will you allow the resistance of the world to convince you that your map is wrong? Or will you hold fast to your own perception, trust your internal compass, and continue the journey, knowing that the lands you discover will one day be a home for others? No pioneer, no matter how skilled or courageous, can survive the wilderness indefinitely on their own. The constant exposure to harsh elements, the loneliness of the trail, the ever-present danger of losing one's way, it takes a toll. This is why the final, crucial part of Jung's blueprint is finding your tribe and establishing a base camp. A base camp is a place of safety, replenishment, and shared understanding. It is where pioneers gather to rest, to treat their wounds, to share their findings, and to remind one another that they are not crazy for seeing a world that others deny. It is a community built not on social convenience, but on mutual recognition of a shared journey. Jung stressed that for the sensitive individual, Finding such a community is not a luxury. It is a psychological necessity. So, how do you find your tribe? You must learn to recognize the signals of fellow pioneers and safe settlers. Fellow pioneers often recognize you instantly. There is a sense of relief in your first conversation, an unspoken understanding that you are speaking the same language. They don't flinch at your emotional intensity. They lean in with genuine curiosity, not judgment. They have journeyed through similar landscapes and bear similar scars. They don't offer you platitudes. They offer you their presence. They see your sensitivity not as a problem to be fixed, but as a dialect to be understood. Safe settlers are a different but equally important group. These are individuals who may not be pioneers themselves, but who possess the wisdom and maturity to value the pioneer's work. They are the stable innkeepers, the wise elders who offer a warm fire and a listening ear without needing to understand the full scope of your journey. They admire your courage, even if they do not share your calling. They are grounded, secure in themselves, and therefore are not threatened by your light. They offer a vital connection back to the world you are trying to serve. Recognizing your tribe also means learning to recognize those who are unfit for your base camp. These are the unconscious saboteurs. They may come disguised as friends or partners, but they consistently invalidate your perceptions. They drain your energy with their chronic negativity. They subtly undermine your confidence, disguising their envy as helpful concern. They are the settlers who fear the wilderness so much that they will try to convince you to abandon your expedition and come back to the safety of the known, boring world. Learning to lovingly but firmly exclude these individuals from your inner circle is an essential act of self-preservation. Your tribe might be small. It might be just 1 or 2 trusted friends, a therapist, a mentor, or a community of like-minded souls you find online. The size does not matter. What matters is the quality of the connection. This base camp is your sanctuary. It is where you remember who you are and why you started this journey in the first place. Without it, even the strongest pioneer risks succumbing to the loneliness of the frontier. So we have journeyed far. We have seen that the resistance you face is a paradox, a sign that your light is reaching the shadowed corners of the world. We've uncovered Jung's essential tools for the expedition: the compass to navigate your inner world, the fortress to protect it, and the translator to decipher the signals of the outer world. And we've understood the absolute necessity of a base camp, a tribe that honors your journey. It becomes clear, then, that the resentment you face is not a stop sign. It is not an indictment. It is a landmark on your map, a rugged mountain pass, or a treacherous river confirming you are deep in uncharted territory. It confirms you are precisely where you need to be. For years, you may have been asking the wrong question. You may have been asking, how can I stop this from happening to me? Or, how can I make them understand? But the journey reframes the entire inquiry. The real question is not, can I survive this journey? You now have the blueprint to do so. The real question, the one that defines your legacy, is this: what new world will I help create once I master it? Because this is your true commission. Your purpose was never to simply fit in with the old world, to find a comfortable niche among the settlers. Your purpose was to chart the emotional pathways for a new one, a world that values emotional honesty over polite performance, authentic connection over superficial networking, and profound compassion over cynical detachment. You are the living proof that sensitivity is not a weakness. It is an advanced form of perception. You are evidence that empathy is not a liability. It is a revolutionary form of intelligence. Every time you choose to honor your authentic feelings in a world that promotes numbness, you forge a new neural pathway for the collective consciousness. Every time you establish a healthy boundary, you model sovereignty for those who feel powerless. Every time you find the courage to speak your intuitive truth, you sound a note that helps humanity remember its own forgotten song. So, I urge you, embrace your role. The world does not need another settler, another person comfortable in what is already known, endlessly debating the familiar furniture in a locked room. It desperately, achingly needs pioneers like you, brave enough to feel what is true and courageous enough to venture out into the wild unknown of the human heart. Pick up your map and your compass. The journey is long, and at times it will be arduous. But you are not alone, and the discoveries you make will be a guide for generations to come. If you recognize yourself as an emotional pioneer, if this message resonates in the deepest parts of your soul, share one discovery you've made on your journey in the comments below. Let us use this space to build our base camp, to share our maps, and to find our tribe. Let's start the expedition right here. And if you wish to continue this exploration into the deepest territories of the soul, be sure to subscribe and join our Fellowship of Pioneers. Your journey is humanity's journey. Thank you for being brave enough to walk it.